Hey everybody, this is Petra Monaco with the Rebel Stand and the Rebel Shine Summit. Today I have Peter Van Twyver. Is that how we say that? I should have asked.
Yes.
Good job, me. And he is a teacher, author, mentor, and healer. And as the healer's healer, he has been active in the media advocating the need for energetic self-care for healers so that healers are able to do the work that the world so desperately needs right now. His online masterclass series, Self-Care for Healers and Empowering the Healer Within, reached viewers all over the world. And we're talking about overcoming fear today and probably some other stuff. So welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
Yeah, we've briefly met previously and we kind of sort of like, well, this is what we'll talk about. And one of the biggest things people get stuck in, whether it comes to making life changes or business changes, it doesn't, like any kind of changes, there's this fear, right? Like, and people just get stuck in that because they're like, oh, but what if? And that's like, I feel like the big, like, what if it works out and what if it doesn't? And so give us a little bit of your perspective of where you come from with that.
Yeah, fear. So the world seems kind of crazy right now, and the collective consciousness is all about fear and change. And, you know, we hear from scientists that the poles are shifting around the planet, and climate changes and, you know, health issues and pandemics and whatnot. And all those issues seem to just kind of promote fear. Yeah. And so I kind of envision it like if you have charcoal and there's a lot of pressure around it over a long period of time, it turns into a diamond, right? So that's alchemy. And right now, I would say our bodies are kind of going through a corporeal alchemy. We're kind of changing. We're becoming different as a result of all this energy around us. So it's a good learning experience. However, it feels very scary. And, you know, if you don't know what's coming next, fear can kind of take over. But fear can kind of be like a label you place on things. You know, fear could be kind of good. Fear can be motivating for you to change. Fear can also inhibit you from changing or doing things that you know you should. But before we get to speaking of labels, I just wanted to share the label sick. Talk about another one that promotes fear. So 2 weeks ago, I had some gluten, and my gut's been goofy ever since. I'm sorry to share so much. Last week, I tried to fast that out and do some detox, and then I started having these symptoms. So I wanted to talk about this, see what you think. Illness, sickness, the symptoms like a cold, a flu, detox, allergies, releasing. Is there really a difference? Like, can you really people put the label sick on what I'm experiencing? And of course, sick makes people scared because we're all petrified of getting, you know, really sick. And, you know, rightly so, there's a lot of stuff going on. But I've been having difficulty trying to figure out exactly how to describe what I'm going through. It feels like a release. I have just a hint, you can hear it. I just have a hint of congestion, and I haven't had a fever. I haven't missed work. But I'm letting go of stuff, and it's uncomfortable.
So I definitely think there's a connection. So first of all, I want to say that the word sick can mean many different things for many different people, right? Like what means sick to you is very, very different what maybe means sick to me and to our listeners and viewers. It doesn't describe just one thing. And I think that's where, and I'm not a super fan of labels, but that's where the differences of naming these things come in, right? That's the asthma. I have asthma and I have allergies. Like that's where we identify sort of like what this is. But also in my experience that as energetic beings and healers and intuitives and whatever we may be, when we get sick with something that like, oh, that's never happened before, or like, I don't know. And I feel like the pandemic kind of plays into that. We are releasing so much stuff that we've been hanging on to, whether it's from childhood, like people tend to call it like the next level or an up level. That's, you know, they're leveling up to that next stage of energetic being, spiritual being, awareness. And I feel like when we deal with these different things, we are definitely like releasing, because during that time we're reflecting, and we're like, oh, well, why did I get sick? Why am I dealing with that now? What's happening? You know, you're releasing something. And you might not know for another week or two what that is, or even for a year. And I'm like, oh, I let go of that. You know, it's sort of like an after thing. Because when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh, it's so uncomfortable. And I'm so frustrated because I can't let this go. And then you just let it run the course. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, okay, moving on. So that's where I sort of come understand all of that.
Yeah, sick is a 4-letter word, but the brain can't help but put labels on things. So we understand, we try to make sense of it. So then illness, allergies, releasing, detox, there's kind of like what you said, there's a lesson there. We're letting it go. We're not exactly sure what. Then there's an aha moment, hopefully at some point, like, you know. So yeah, there's a lesson there. There's a purpose, and it has to happen. But not knowing why, not knowing exactly what, that can promote fear. So maybe the lesson is, we have fear, we have illness. Those are labels too, right?
Yeah.
How do you react to that? It's how do you react to the fear? How do you react to the illness? Because sometimes if I get sick, it's really the body telling me I need a day off, right? Time to take a nap. Right?
Time to take that rest, for sure. And I think, like, I've not had any great illnesses in a really long time. I've had a broken ankle like years ago, and I'm dealing with a stress fracture now. And I definitely feel like it's probably telling me to rest. It's probably like, hey, you need to hit that pause and just kind of not push so hard, because I'm a pusher, I'm an action taker, and I do. I'm very masculine in my energy a lot of times. And so now the feminine is saying, hey, how about you chill? And I'm like, no, I don't want to. But you see what I'm saying? And I've watched my partner and my son struggle with some chronic long-term things. They're never going away. My partner will always be a diabetic, and my son will always be a liver transplant person dealing with immune suppression. But I was able to release and learn from those events. And as you said, like, what do we take from that? You know, how do we like with a broken bone, you know, the end result, that's going to hopefully heal and you'll be able to walk again if it's your foot. With those, we're always walking in the unknown. So how do you stay calm and out of that fear, right?
Yeah, there is that word accept or allow, and we have to, if the issue doesn't go away, perhaps we're not learning the lesson, or we need more time to learn the lesson, or there's more to it. Maybe there's layers. So we just kind of have to allow and participate in the process. And for me, what I realized was it started off with a gluten issue, and the gut became imbalanced. And the gut, interestingly, is where we manufacture feelings like fear. It's manufactured in the gut from digestive activity with the bacteria and the biome in the gut. So I disrupted my gut. Therefore, I disrupted my immune system. I disrupted my feelings. And then I started having symptoms very shortly after that. So I don't know if I want to call it sick. I mean, my COVID test was negative, never had a fever. So what do you call it?
It's unwell, and unwell is just another word for sick, but it may not be as impactful, right? So I'm just feeling unwell. It sounds a lot softer, in my opinion, than, oh, I'm sick. Because sick's just like, you know what I'm saying? Like the words we use, which I feel is really important as well, as we're talking about labels and all these different things, the words we use can really impact how we move through that fear as well, I think. What about you?
Words definitely have power. And then it goes back to, what are you telling yourself? What's the self-talk in relation to that 4-letter word, sick or illness or whatever label you've ascribed to it? It's some people's self-talk is so ugly that I've had people tell me I'd never say that to somebody else. And then, why would you say it to yourself? So right. Self-talk is huge.
I think part of that is that we are our own worst critic. I mean, first of all, we have all this messaging that we've had since we were little. And I don't care how ugly or how pretty your upbringing was. We have these different messages we've taken on over the years. And so, you know, we've become these caregivers, these people of service, like be nice to other people, put other people first, and we're never in the first place, right? Like other people need to win before we do type situation, you know what I mean? And so our self-talk just aligns with all of that we've received. And so we become our own worst critic in that process. I see it a lot with the creatives in the artist community, like, and I've done it, you know, I wood burn for a living, and it's like, oh, this piece is not even like worth of selling, and the next person like, this is amazing, and I'm like, do you even know what you're talking about? Wow. You know. See? So I feel like that's what we do. So how do you feel that, what is the best approach for us to address our own self-talk? Because I think we're in a place in the world that self is becoming first.
Yeah, so you have to become aware of the self-talk, so you have to be mindful of it. And it's kind of like manifestation 101. What you have to identify it, you have to have some clarity with it, you have to have an action behind it. What do you want to do? You want to change it, and then there has to be feeling attached, a positive feeling, and then you have to allow. So that's manifestation 101. Frequently our core beliefs directly impact our self-talk and how we feel about ourselves. And that starts very, very young, perhaps before we're even pre-verbal, very, very young, before the age of 7, definitely. And it goes back to situations like you're about to stick your finger in the electrical socket, and your parents see you, and you're, ooh, what's this, right? And you're just checking it out, and your parents are like, you know, they're yelling at you and screaming at you because they don't want you to die. But you don't understand that because you're getting yelled at, and that's traumatic, and you internalize it, and it changes your DNA, it changes your cells, it changes how you feel about yourself. And it can become rather permanent, and depending on how you react to it, it can be traumatic, and we may stuff that down, and then it pops out later when when it's not so opportune, or it comes out when it comes out. And then so it just kind of, and then there's layers upon layers of dealing with it. You stuff it way down, but it becomes part of you.
Right. And I can certainly relate to that. Like, you know, I grew up in foster care. And so I have all these stories that I was told for sure growing up. And then I don't have the same fear as most people. I mean, I stepped on an airplane and moved to another country with nothing about this place at all. Like, I had zero idea. I didn't even speak English, and I just stepped on an airplane. I had a baby at the time, and people are like, well, how did you do it? And I'm like, I don't know, I just did it. And and in hindsight, it's like, oh, that's crazy. Like, what? Right? So we have these moments too where we're like, well, that was a little probably not smart. And then we react to that going, oh, well, I can't do that again. You know, with all that stuff that followed after.
At least that first time when you get on the plane, you did not allow fear to get in the way. You just did it. Yeah. So if you had fear, you definitely confronted it, and you dealt with it, and you pushed it aside, and you did what you had to do. So that's...
Well, I mean, I learned that I didn't like flying. Like, I don't ever want to spend 13 hours on an airplane again. You know, like, wow. Yeah, it's a long flight from Frankfurt to Detroit, but you do learn things in the process of when you do things on impulse. And I don't always recommend doing things on impulse, that's for sure. But you can learn things from that. But also in those impulse situations, and I've noticed for myself, is that afterwards I was way more selective and took a long time to make decisions, because I then became stuck in that fear. I'm going, what did I just do? How crazy is that? I can't put myself out there like that again. And then just became sort of like a hermit crab, you know, just kind of hide away until I've had another like big thing, like my son's journey in itself, like that catapulted me to where I'm at today. And so, but there's people that are listening and they're like, well, I didn't do that, but they may want to change their health. And health is such a big thing. And I'm not talking about diet culture or anything else like that, but we know we want to improve our health because, you know, we're only here we want to live the best life But we get stuck in the stories of like, well, I can't work out 3 days a week. I don't have time to work out. All these stories and excuses. How can we overcome this fear and make us, again, the self, more important?
Yeah, so it sounds like a prioritization issue. What's most important? Maybe one tactic might be, and this is what I was thinking about. What if I'm releasing, or more likely if I'm actually sick, what am I deficient in that would cause that? So it could be I don't sleep well. I work probably 80 hours a week. Sleep is a premium. That's just not going to last on a prolonged basis before there's some kind of shutdown that's involved, right? Exercise, I do get plenty of exercise. Sometimes it's extreme, and you've shared your extreme version of that, and that resulted in a shutdown. So I think at the very least I'm out of balance, and I did notice that immediately before I started having symptoms, I was lacking zinc and I was lacking vitamin D and magnesium. So those are kind of the big three that many people are deficient in. So one tactic could be, what are you lacking? What are you missing in your life to get you where you really want to be? That's one thought process.
Yeah. No, and I love that. And I like coming from that perspective. So many times, like in the coaching world, people are like, well, what do you want? What do you desire? And I know from experience working with my clients, they don't know. Right? It's sort of like, oh, I want to make steady income and I want a nice house. Like it's all that materialistic stuff, but it's not the realness of what they want. Like it's the feeling safe. It's the feeling secure. It's the feeling loved. It's those feeling things that we really desire. But we don't know how to name that because we've never given permission to name that and honor that and be like, you know what? I want to feel safe. And for me, that's one of the first lessons I've probably learned is to be safe as who I am, because I had such a troubled upbringing. You know what I mean? There was no safety net for me. And so I had to create that. So I feel like that's where a lot of the healing needs to happen too, is to really acknowledge and overcome that fear. We like, and sit with that. It's like, well, this is what I really want, and get into those feelings instead of always looking at the materialistic stuff. That's great and dandy. I'm not knocking it. I like my tech. I like my little things too. But I truly think it comes over, overcoming the fear of being loved, feeling worthy, of deserving to have that great relationship, deserving to have the family that you want to have. You know what I mean?
Right. A lot of people have similar core beliefs, not feeling worthy, not feeling safe. And, it's okay to have fear. It's okay to not feel safe. It's okay to not feel worthy. I mean, if you consider yourself to be a healer, you have to have that solar plexus chakra imbalance. You have to have that difficulty with self-worth, because how else are you going to resonate with your clients? How else are you going to be able to say from experience, step in your power and say, yes, I had that problem. This is how I did overcome that. So welcome to the club. If you have self-worth issues, you are a healer. Congratulations.
Now you're unstuck.
Yeah. Welcome to the club. But so we all have to deal with that. But you start off by understanding it's okay. It's okay to have fear. We're taught to not be afraid or not show emotions, cover that up. Don't cry.
Don't be angry.
Releasing is good.
Don't be angry.
Don't be angry.
Yeah. And it's one of the first things I've learned in the last 15, 18 years or whatever is, my feelings are okay and my feelings are valid. Because I also, with the self-worth aligned, people are like, oh, my feelings aren't valid because somebody else has it worse than you. And you're not allowed to feel that way because somebody else has it worse than you. And it's no, you're allowed to feel what you feel.
So again, there's a lesson there. There's a purpose. We have to learn these things so that we can help our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Okay, we're nearing our end of our conversation. So I want to know, what is the one thing you would like people to know on how to move forward, like overcoming fear, whatever your number two, whether that's life or business or healing, the one thing you definitely want them to know.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to share two techniques. One is kind of like a more 911 thing. You can really hack your vagus nerve. You can really overcome the symptoms, the feelings of fear and being afraid, fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
Just by taking control of the breath, is something as simple as that. We tend to breathe up here rapidly and shallowly, and that just tells the vagus nerve, it's time to fight, or it's time to flee, or it's time to freeze. None of those are really any good for us. So if you can just put your hand on your belly, and as you breathe, you're trying to breathe a little deeper and a little slower than you normally would. And if you slow down the breathing and make it deeper and breathe like you're supposed to through the belly. So as you breathe in, push that belly out. Don't breathe up here.
Yeah.
Breathe through the belly. And then, of course, when you breathe out, you just relax. So you push the hand out that's over the belly as you breathe in. And breathe out. So the hack, decreasing vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is the sympathetic dominance. Vagus nerve is fight, flight, freeze. You need to calm that down. And you do that very quickly and very effectively with proper breathing. Another technique that I really love is EFT, emotional freedom technique. And it's so simple. I can teach in a minute. This is sort of like a basic recipe type by Gary Craig. And there's a whole lot of different teachers out there. So basically you start off by tapping the karate chop point. Mm-hmm. And then there's other points you can just follow along. So there's over the eyebrow, side of the eye, under the nose, chin, under the collarbone, under the armpit, about, 4 inches down, then on top of the head to finish off. So I can give you a quick script, and we'll kind of gear it towards fear. And so you say, even though I have this fear, whatever fear it is,
right?
I completely and deeply love and accept myself. And you'll say that 3 times. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And then you'll go tap 7 times or so. Then when I'm hitting my armpit point, I'm using my thumbs because it's easy, and then the top of the head. And then, so prior to doing that, you want to give your fear a number. How bad is it? 0 to 10. You get a baseline. Say the 3 statements, tap on the karate chop point, go through your points, hit 7 times, be nice to your face, don't give yourself a shiner. And then after you're done, and that's just one run, or one time through, re-rate it. How does it feel? And it should get better. And if it's not a 0, do it again.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm familiar with that technique. I follow Brad Yates quite a bit. He's sort of like one of the big people with it, right? And there was one, I can't remember her name. It was a female. But there's sort of the big, I don't remember. But they're one of the big people with it. So I've certainly have benefited from using that. So if you're new to this technique, check it out. It can really help. For me, it's very calming. Again, same with the breathing, it just reduces me wanting to run away. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So you have a free gift for our viewers and listeners. Share about that a little bit.
So I have it's about a 27-minute video entitled Overcoming Fear. And it's kind of like a master class. And I give other tips and other, scientific rationale about fear and what you can do to self-care for overcoming fear, not using the techniques we just did, but good stuff to know.
Yeah. And where can people connect with you outside of this conversation?
Yes. So my website's called Platinum Ray Academy. So it's www.platinumrayacademy.com. And you can subscribe and get on the email list, or you can even send me a message to the website.
Awesome. And I will have all that information at the bottom of this conversation. So it's just easy. All you have to do is click. So, Peter, thank you so much for this conversation. I think it was really, really powerful. I hope people got some good stuff out of that.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on.